So when I found out that there is a new period piece folk horror vampire movie that is based on a gothic novella and folklore that predates Bram Stoker's Dracula, I was like crazy excited. So let's talk about the Vourdalak. Welcome, my friends, to the Cobwebs channel. My name is Daniel. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. So the Vourdalak is a brand new French film that is about a Marquis who is a noble emissary of the King of France who is lost in the hostile woods and finds refuge in the home of a strange family. Now, I had not heard anything about this movie before a few days ago, and my friends over at the Splattercast YouTube channel just put out a review for this film. By the way, check them out. Link for that review down in the description below. And when I learned about this movie from that, I couldn't believe I hadn't heard about it, and I was so excited. And they actually got me in contact with some people that were able to get me a screener for this film. So thank you so much to Splattercast, to the studio Oscilloscope. Thank you so much to everybody involved. I was so happy to be able to watch this movie. Now, this comes out in theaters this weekend, but if I had to guess, it's probably not going to be a real wide release, so you might have to wait for streaming. Now that I've seen it, let's talk about what I liked about this film. Now, first of all, I just loved everything about how this movie feels. This movie feels exactly like I want a period piece folk horror film to feel. I love folk horror. I love the old school stuff when it comes to like The Wicker Man and Blood on Satan's Claw. I just love that typical atmosphere of people living out in a rural area, farmland in the past, and being afraid of what is lurking out in the darkness. The witches, the vampires, all kinds of stuff that's synonymous with folk horror. Cults. I just love that. And this movie is such a meticulous recreation of the past. Everything from the costumes to the sets, the settings. The main character, who is a Marquis, I mean, they stick to their guns on making him period accurate, because this dude is wearing tights, a wig, powdered white makeup, a fake mole through the whole movie as the high-class aristocrats of this time period in this country did look. And I really think that just following a main character that looks like that for a whole movie is going to be a turnoff for a lot of people. But this movie sticks to it. This movie did remind me of Robert Eggers. It reminded me of seeing The Witch in terms of how Robert Eggers is so incredibly detailed on his period recreation. And that's how this movie made me feel. And I am really anticipating Robert Eggers' Nosferatu that's coming out at the end of the year. And watching this period piece vampire film, It just felt like I was getting a little taste of Nosferatu early, which was just such a special feeling. I love the feeling of this movie, even the music. There's a lot of music in this film. There's a score, of course. The music is very much, I read that it is supposed to be like traditional Slavic, Russian kind of music.
Que faites-vous?
Et la danse.
But it's very much that very creepy, very old type of music that you would expect to hear in a folk horror film. And music is very important for this movie. Now, I'm not going to tell you it's a musical, because I think that would definitely put some people off. It's not, but singing and dancing are important to a lot of different sequences of the film. That I loved, but let's talk about the vampire, or the Vourdalak. I just feel like I have to say it like that every single time. The Vourdalak. Okay, now what is a Vourdalak? In traditional folklore, it is basically a vampire that just feeds on the blood of its family, of the people that it loved in life, which is a little bit of a change from the normal traditional vampire. And this movie is actually based on a gothic novella that came out about 40 years before Bram Stoker's Dracula, called The Family of the Vourdalak by Tolstoy. Let's just say that, Tolstoy. And I wasn't sure how much I really wanted to tell you about the vampire in this, but after reading interviews, articles about the movie, it's clear everyone involved with the film considers the vampire is the main selling point, so I'm going to tell you what they will tell you. The vampire is not played by an actor. The vampire is played by a marionette, a puppet. This is literally a full-on practical effect puppet. And honestly, it looks to the eye less like a vampire than you would see like in any vampire movie in terms of how it moves, how it feels, and more like a zombie out of something like Return of the Living Dead. And honestly, that kind of works, because in traditional folklore, a vampire and a zombie are pretty much always the same thing. Like, either way, it's just a dead corpse that gets up, walks around, and drinks people's blood. So the fact that this very much looks and feels like a zombie kind of worked, but it is undoubtedly an incredibly bold choice. Because look, I compared this movie to Robert Eggers, and this would really feel like a Robert Eggers type movie, like a The Witch kind of a film, if the vampire was played by an actor. But they go such a dramatic, wild direction by literally making this a puppet. Now, the director of this film, named Adrian Bowe, he has a real passion for puppets, and he really wanted to make this a puppet because he cited that he loves movies like Alien and The Fly, and he really loved the puppetry that was used for the monsters in those films. But the difference here is, in those two movies, when puppetry was used, I mean, it's a full-on creature. This vampire is a creature, but it is also an intelligent, thinking, speaking person that certain characters in the movie take seriously as a person. Now, the vampire is the father of this whole family that the Marquis is visiting. And most of the family members pretty much know right away, like, he is now a Vourdalak. This is a problem. But the eldest son is holding on to that hope. And he's like, no, you guys are crazy. There's no such thing as Vourdalaks. This is our father. Like, we have to respect him. We have to love him.
No way. No.
And the idea that anyone would take this thing seriously as a breathing, living anything is ridiculous, because it looks just like a skeleton, practically, just kind of hobbling around. And look, is this bad? Was this a bad decision? I think if you're the kind of horror fan that wants to be very much drawn into reality, wants to believe something is real, and therefore gets scared because you're just drawn into the reality of what you're watching, this is not going to work for you. Like, you're not going to like this. You're going to laugh at it, probably. But for me, I'm not that kind of horror fan. I don't watch horror for reality. I love imagination. I love practical effects. I just love fantasy. And this movie is like a fantasy fairy tale horror film, very much because they go this direction with the monster. And I thought it was so cool. At times it's really creepy, especially when it's a little more shrouded in darkness, like it's really creepy. Sometimes they very much show it to you in broad daylight, just straight on, and it looks incredibly fake. But I don't care about that. I really don't, because I just love practical effects, and I just loved this effect. This is one of my favorite vampires in recent memory in terms of recent vampire movies, and it's a puppet. Like, there hasn't been a vampire puppet this good since Forgetting Sarah Marshall.
This is a song that I never thought I would write. On the night I'm dying, how about your esophagus?
Also, the director, Adrian Bowe, did the puppetry himself, and he voiced the Vourdalak, which is really, really cool. Now, all the characters in this are really good. All the actors are really good. I particularly like the sister of the family, who ends up having kind of a relationship with our main character, our Marquis. A complicated relationship, not a traditional romance where it's like, oh, aren't they sweet? They're the good people. They belong together. I mean, our main Marquis guy, he's a complicated character. He starts the movie very just weak, and you feel like he's this pathetic weakling. Very much, I think, because of at least my biases and kind of seeing him in this white makeup and this wig and seeing him act very timid. But then this darker side comes out of him where you feel like, oh, I don't like this guy. But then there's other times where he's like the only person arguing for doing the right thing in the room. And I felt like his character did grow as we went. And I did, like, my feelings on him changed several times, and I thought he was a pretty interesting character, and I did really like his relationship with the sister, complicated as though it may be. It was interesting, and it definitely kept the emotional core of the movie going. For negatives on the movie, look, this is a movie that makes very bold choices, and because of that, it is going to push some people away, but for the people it doesn't push away, they're really going to latch onto it, and that's exactly what I said about In a Violent Nature, by the way, when I reviewed that recently. Two horror films that make dramatic choices that are very unusual. Some people are going to love it, some people are going to hate it. I loved it. I loved the puppetry. I loved all the weirdness, the fairy tale aspect of the whole thing. I know some people are going to find this movie kind of slow. I never did. I was always very interested. I was always very much just soaking up the atmosphere of this film. And I just don't have major complaints. I think this is one of the most interesting vampire films in recent memory. So let's go ahead and rate the Vourdalak. Now for atmosphere, I'm going to give this a 9. I think this is darn near perfect folk horror atmosphere, rural and foggy and stormy. The movie literally opens with a thunderstorm, several more thunderstorms, at least one more thunderstorm happen in the movie. The music, too often when I talk about the atmosphere of films, by the way, I realize I'm talking exclusively about visual atmosphere, but what about the audio atmosphere? Man, the music adds so much. This is nearly perfect folk horror atmosphere, almost at that The Witch level. For characters, I'm going to give this a 7. I thought the Marquis was a pretty interesting character, not one that you love all the way through, but complex, and I was definitely interested in him. I liked the sister a lot. Some of the other characters are a little more one-dimensional for sure, but of course, the Vourdalak himself, just a fascinating choice, and I just loved the movie whenever the Vourdalak was on screen. Now for story, I'm also going to give this a 7. This is definitely not a complex, fascinating story, I wouldn't say, but it's interesting enough. It's mostly just about a fish out of water in this situation, kind of being stuck there and trying to figure out this bizarre situation as he goes. Not terribly complex, but definitely solid. Gets the job done. And then for scares, I'm going to give this an 8. Now, is it a scary movie? Was I scared? No. But I think my regular viewers know by now that that's not really what I'm rating with this category. It's about the horror. How is the content for horror fans? And I think it's fantastic. I just love this vampire. The blood drinking scene, you get like 1 or 2 are really, really good. There's a scene towards the end that's actually really gross and disturbing. So all in all, this averages out very well to an 8, which is exactly what I gave it on Letterboxd, a 4 out of 5. It comes out in theaters this weekend. I seriously doubt it's going to be a wide release, so you might have to wait for streaming, but definitely look out for this one. That's it for this review. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to talk about vampire movies more, check out this video right over here for my top 15 1970s vampire films. A lot of vintage vampire talk in there. Also put the playlist of a ton of other vampire videos that I have done. Give a like if you enjoy this and subscribe for more videos like this. Thank you so much for watching. With all that said, don't forget to enjoy yourself today, have some fun, and I will see you next time.